Hello, fashion friends and family. This is Stacy from BROMO. And today we have the series Fashion Incubation. And we are joined by Shruti Singh, who we will be interviewing. And the whole point of this conversation is to share notes on an international level on the amazing work that is being done around the world, but also that is sort of being reimagined for the industry as a whole. Welcome, Shruti. We're so happy to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here, Stacy.
Yeah, if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background, we'd love to know more.
Hi, everyone. I work at the intersections of design, policy, and fashion, and also education at times. So I think it's a multifaceted role, and I really enjoy being in this space. My background is in design, but I worked a lot in gender justice, in education. I've worked with the Ministry of Human Resource Development in India and at the Ministry of Textiles in India to figure out how policy can create a change at a large scale, especially for those who are working in craft and fashion supply chains. I've studied at NIFT, Delhi, and my undergraduate was in fashion design. Then I studied at University of Arts, London with Stacy at London College of Fashion. We did masters in fashion entrepreneurship. I've done another master's in public administration from Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, National University of Singapore. So this is roughly my background. Currently, I'm working as the country head for Fashion Revolution India. Fashion Revolution is a global not-for-profit that works on building systemic changes in the fashion supply chains on the environmental as well as the social side. They advocate for safe, clean, fair, transparent supply chains and how this work can truly impact and create a better fashion industry going forward.
That's so exciting. I don't know if I mentioned it. After I graduated from London College of Fashion, I went on to do a second master's in nonprofit management and social entrepreneurship. So it was really interesting that both of our journeys got into that space of creating impact, but really defining what that impact is beyond the garments themselves. So I want to kind of take us back to London College of Fashion and think about what do we remember about each other. And I'll start. I remember Shruti was always on board, sort of like, let's do something, let's create change. So whenever there was new ideas, I wanted to launch the Fashion Entrepreneur Society, the club, and then start, implementing entrepreneurship outside of the classroom. You were completely on board and you were like, had your notepad, you're like taking notes and you're like, let's go. So I wonder what you can remember about me during that time.
I was going to mention the Entrepreneurship Society because I think Stacy was always committed to creating better societies, better communities, and systems for change. And she started and spearheaded the UAL Entrepreneurship Society at that time. And it was focused on building entrepreneurs, getting them the right kind of support systems because she believed that would create a change. And I was really inspired in her leadership. And I said, okay, let's do it. Let's support whatever dreams she has because she seems to know where she's going. And that was another thing. I think her vision was always very clear of what she wanted to do in life and how she wanted to create that change. And I think she's doing that today. And I'm saying she, but thanks, Stacey. I think it's wonderful to see your journey and to see that you've done all the amazing things that you have.
Thank you so much. And it's so wonderful and exciting to know that even from school time, like when we're still exploring who we are within the work, that we kind of know what it is we care about. And if we just stay aligned to that, we can build a lifetime of a love relationship with our work. So I'm excited to see that and to talk more. So we have 5 questions for you, Shruti. And the first one is to ask, what is the one thing you wish you had known at the start of your journey that you know now?
I think networks are very, very important. And I don't mean like just going to meetings and networking with everyone, but really creating meaningful relationship with people, organizations, businesses around us, because that's what really takes us far. We will not solve, especially in the impact space, or if you're as an entrepreneur, there will be so many things and skills that you don't have that the other person has. So really kind of tying into that collaborative ecosystem is very important. And I wish I had known that before, because coming from a professional field, especially in a college environment, I think everyone gets really competitive, or you have this sense of zero-sum game that, one person is going to be at the top, 10 people are going to be at the best. And all these lists make us think that we have to compete with each other. But in reality, the people who are doing, or the organizations who are doing the best today, are the ones who've learned the art of working within that network and collaborating within that ecosystem. And I think that's one takeaway I would want everyone to have, that collaborate. Your peers, are going to be your biggest strength going forward.
And that's exactly what we did when we started. And then now circling back and resuming the conversation is really wonderful and sweet. So the next question we have is, how can we nourish and grow high quality sewing methods without polluting the world with the overproduction of unnecessary goods? And I'm going to clarify that for some of our audience. So in order to be successful as an industry or as a business, you want to have productivity. You want to grow that the number of products you're selling, and year by year you do that. But in the fashion industry, that's also part of the original system and how you expand and you make things obsolete so then you can make a new thing. But at the same time, that's detrimental to the environment. And so that's a tough thing to tackle. So I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
I think on one hand, we always talk about like producing less, but on the other, the trends, and everyone wants to wear something new. So I think there are so many other ways to explore of how we use fashion to express ourselves. When it comes to entrepreneurs or designers working in this field, I would say, first of all, it's really important to choose the materials well, because the kind of materials and the processes you choose determine the kind of impact that it has on the environment, in the communities. So are you using natural dyes? Are you using synthetic threads to embroider? And we've seen that even in indigenous communities now, synthetic and polyester threads have kind of come in, and that changes the way the weave is done, and the fabric doesn't feel the same. And of course, polyester, as we all know, has a tremendous impact on the environment. So one is, think about the materials, think about the processes that you want to incorporate in your businesses. Second thing is, scale means different things to different people. If you look at traditional businesses, scale would mean, what is your return on investment? What are your profits like? How much are you producing? How much are you selling? And as sustainable businesses, as people aspiring to create a better world, I think that's the logic that cannot work for us. And that's okay. It's okay to create a new system. It's okay to put, instead of money logic or profit logic or growth logic, we can put earth logic, keeping natural resources in mind, keeping earth and the communities in mind when designing your impact. So your impact could easily mean the number of people that are doing well in your supply chain. The artisans that you work with, have their lives improved in the time frame you have engaged with them. So impact can mean different things to different people. So I think that's also really, really important to keep in mind. Slow fashion has grown as a movement, and slow fashion simply doesn't mean less. It just means designing mindfully, growing mindfully, being in sync with your consumers, your target audiences. What do they want? So when you're in sync with them, you know exactly how much to produce, what kind of colors do they like. So just be on point in that sense. I would say, we've come into an era where we order something today and we get it tomorrow. And that's what's causing this overproduction, because everything has to be on our fingertips. We want it now. We cannot wait for it. And I think it's a learned skill. When I order things now from small businesses, I'm happy to wait for 3-4 weeks for it to be produced, because I know that they will make it only once I order it. And this will take time, and that brings me to my last point. Educating people or advocating for this change is important. Since you are the people who are creating this system, it's unfortunately or fortunately upon your shoulders to also bring about education on how fast fashion impacts the environment, how it's impacting the social equity in the fashion supply chains. So make education as part of your storytelling when you talk about your brand.
I love that. And you just really nicely led us into the next question I have, which is around the individual who is creating this work. So What responsibility do early stage fashion entrepreneurs hold in standing up to big business in a way that is positive and inspiring?
I think lead by example. So I think the biggest advantage individually or as an individual designer, as a small business, is that you can lead by example, you can lead by authenticity, you can buy into transparency because your decision, you define your decisions on how the business is operated. Second, I think is you have also the ability to experiment. I know that the best case studies of good practices, which are beneficial to the environment, are actually coming from MSMEs, from small designers, from independent people who are experimenting. They're running micro experiments. They're saying, does this work? Does this not work? They are the ones who are most transparent. They are also the ones who are embedding traceability into their systems, going to the crop. Okay, which farmer is growing my crop? How are they getting paid? Are they happy? Do we know who's spinning, who's ginning, who's the weaver who's working on my fabric? So you have that advantage to go back into your supply chains and create that beautiful ecosystem. And that's something that legislations will come for big businesses, but as small businesses, you have the advantage of doing that already, and consumers will start demanding for that transparency and that traceability into the systems. And you, I think, would be the front runners in making this happen already. So I think you can play an incredible role. And like I said before, I think even all the innovative practices, even the innovation in terms of dyeing, in terms of different kind of weaves, and all of that is coming from smaller businesses, from artisanal businesses, the people who are very connected to the supply chain. So yeah, go for it.
I love how you're saying who is spinning and who is ginning. It sounds like such a great jingle for the needle trays and the weaving work. Um, so my next question is, what kind of future do you wish for the fashion industry, and how will you be a part of building that?
I think the fashion industry really needs to relook at the systems that have been designed fairly recently. Fast fashion is also a fairly recent phenomena, and now we're at ultra fast fashion where you have 20,000 designs dropping every single day. I think we need to relook at what our relationship with fashion or our relationship with clothes are. At an individual as a consumer, I can say that even if we buy more, we're still not happy. And that relationship with the clothes that we have, which were passed on maybe by our grandmother or our mother, and we have that kind of sense of, I wore this garment so many times, or I wore it on my graduation, I wore it on my special day, or just remembering those simple things. So I think we need to take a hard look at how we interact with fashion, of course. And that also becomes part of education, and that's one of the things I think is important on the consumer side, is to really relook at how we interact with fashion, what is our relationship, how we express ourselves, and is it possible to get a new look but still not buy more. So thrifting is coming up, so many people are upcycling things, they are sharing a wardrobe, they're reselling to the same brands that were selling them. So a lot of small brands are actually offering a resale, mending, upcycling service. So I think that's really, really important as a consumer to know that these options are also available to get a new look, to trade without putting additional stress on the environment, on Earth's resources. So that's one. I think what's also important is to really slow down, um, value quality over quantity, similarly, durability over disposability, because I think we are living in an era where your garments are like one-time wear or like single-use plastic. So we use them, we get them for a single look, that single frame, that photograph on Instagram, but we don't use them beyond because they've become that disposable. And that cannot, unfortunately, continue. So I see us slowing down and relooking at how fashion supply chains, businesses have traditionally functioned. And a lot of that change will also come through policy, because over so many years, we've had campaigns across the world which campaign and advocate for more transparency, better working conditions, living wages for workers, but that's not happening, unfortunately, Stacy. Voluntarily, no one is giving better pay to people who are working in their supply chains. They are not voluntarily offering that information and saying, "Come, look at my factory. Is it well lit for the people? Are the fire exits blocked? Can people escape if, in case of emergency?" So those are small things that I know there are systems of audit in place, but consumers tomorrow are asking for more transparency. And another way, which I think personally, I come from a policy background, but also as Fashion Revolution advocates for policy changes, I see myself working on building, enabling, and helping collect data, do research, which will help decision makers take the right decisions for legislations and policy that can drastically make a change in the industry, because small changes, it's not happening at a fast enough pace. We right now we need radical actions, and that will only happen, in my opinion, through policy changes. So that's another area where I think I would like to personally contribute to. And the third thing is, like, I coming back to being an ecosystem enabler, because we all have to work together. There may be solutions already existing, we just have to replicate them, we have to scale them, we have to share that knowledge. So I also see Fashion Revolution and myself working with the small fashion designers, slow fashion designers, MSMEs, to solve these problems together. Can we come together with our knowledge, with our skills, to figure out systems that work much better as compared to the fast fashion systems that we have created? Because the more we try to fit in slow fashion systems on the system of fast fashion, the metrics based on fast fashion, we're never going to succeed. Even the financial instruments required to support slow fashion businesses are very different from the financial instruments required to support big businesses. The gestation period is more, the return on investment is less, but you have to look at it from a long period of time, because they do give returns in terms of overall improvement of livelihoods, overall improvement of environment. So yeah, these are some of the ways I think I would want to contribute. And I think it, again, I don't think it's an I thing, because we all have to do it together. So I'm looking to support people who are in this mission. I'm looking forward to working with people who are going the same route.
It's so exciting. I love seeing your vision around that, and really letting people know that it's okay to slow down and to reconsider the way things are being done. I think coming from London Contra Fashion, and at the time being in the industry from some time, you go to these schools and you work for these companies because you assume that they know the best thing to do because they're successful. But at the same time, as this new voice, as these new eyes, as this different perspective from different countries and experiences, we have to have a bit more conviction in our ideas so that we can move things forward. So my last question is, how is India's fashion industry keeping the needle trade skills alive and passing these traditions on beyond the factory environment?
So a lot of needlework in India is actually done by artisans, by craftspeople. In a village economy, in that setup, they do it because it's been something that's passed on, that knowledge has been passed on from generations. The kids start learning very early how to kind of handle these artisanal knowledge and indigenous knowledge. I think we haven't, like all other countries, I think we are facing that machine technology interventions versus handmade products. So handmade products, I would say, have suffered in the recent past. A lot of artisans, kids don't want to become artisans and don't want that knowledge because they've seen their parents not make enough money to have their needs met. And I don't know. And there is this sense of like, why, when they're so talented, they have that talent, they have that skill, they are, and having that technique is so important. But we are still not able to give them the fair compensation. We don't look at them as collaborators. We look at them as vendors, or we outsource from them. But instead of looking at them as masters of their craft and masters of their skill. But there are, I would say, even though in recent past all of this has happened, there are still systems in place which are helping preserve this and kind of reverse this negative impact that has happened. One of the first is have artisanal cooperatives or self-help groups where artisans are put into a working group together, and they're given orders, and government facilitates in terms of materials, in terms of machines, in terms of, and I mean sewing machines and like materials, raw materials, to kind of make things happen, to build products which are relevant for today's time in terms of design. With those design interventions, there are a lot of upskilling workshops as well. Then we also have institutes like Indian Institute of Craft and Design. We have a lot of design colleges, but we have some which are focused on craft and design, where they say that, let the artisan and the designer, why should there be two ecosystems where someone is saying I'm a fashion designer and someone is saying I'm a craftsman? It should be blended together because the supply chains are blended, the knowledge is blended, the product has skills of everybody. So they support artisans, they support children of artisans study design, and they work together on bridging that gap between like designers and like craftspeople. So everyone works together to support that ecosystem and really understand the value of that craft. So I think these are some of the things that are being done. Then of course there are a lot of people who I want to give a shout out also to advocates and influencers who have taken it upon themselves to share this knowledge with people, because storytelling has become very, very important in, as I almost see that it as part of education. People follow these reels, and the influencers speaking that language, making those reels around needlework. They're making those reels around embroidery, around weaving, so all those indigenous techniques and sharing knowledge about it. So I think these are the things which are helping the ecosystem, but a lot needs to be done. It's not enough. And I think there are some accelerators which are coming up in India for artisans to become entrepreneurs. So I think there's a lot happening, and I think I can go on and on about this, but these are some of the top ones which I think are more relevant and have made an incredible impact.
I love that concept of bringing the children in to learn the design side so that it becomes that family legacy work that kind of drops off when the child has no interest in engaging with that work. So thank you so much, Shruti, for sharing all this wonderful insight into your work in the industry. And then I wanted to check to see if you have any questions for me before we wrap.
I would love to know about the work that you're doing, and in all of this time, what would be your takeaways? And if you had some advice for entrepreneurs in India, from all the work, amazing work that you're doing there, what would be the top one or two things you would say that they should practice?
Oh my goodness, good question. I would say my work has really transitioned quite a bit. So just for context, for those who don't know, I'm an Indonesian American. I, studied and worked in the UK in the luxury fashion industry, moved to Bali, Indonesia, worked directly with the artisans, set up my own fashion house. And then when I returned to Baltimore, my hometown, it's in the United States, in Maryland, I found out we had a garment industry, and it had died in the 1970s due to unions fighting for fair working conditions and rates. And I worked for one of the last garment factories, and I saw that the knowledge was not being passed on from the factory environment. And when I had two colleagues die suddenly in the industry, I really got serious and said, wow, we need to get going on this because no one else is going to do it, not in our city. And I was the closest bridge to I was around people who are old enough to know of old industry, but I'm young enough to carry that knowledge forward, not in my own technical ability necessarily, but we ended up taking over a garment factory, turned it into a school to keep these industry skills alive. But we primarily focus on working with the fashion entrepreneurs that are impact driven, not necessarily coming from the fashion industry, but having a sewn good or soft good innovation or product they're going to market for, and need help to develop at that quality standard, but linking them with the current industry that are looking to reboot, but be mindful and being mindful of the wage that's being paid. I would say now, knowing what I know, there's such a beauty to the slow methods that don't add up to a product that is like warranted or valued as society to that dollar amount due to the mass production of goods and the lowering of price points. I'm really engaged more in the knowledge share and the kind of bigger conversation and creating like fashion education, entertainment, and conversation around awareness and advocacy as we're doing here. But also I have really had to prioritize my own fine arts practice. So myself hand sewing with this invisible thread and taking inspiration from my Indonesian culture with the kebaya. And what was fascinating, as much as it didn't add up from a business sense, right? The numbers don't add up. There's so much more media and interest in that work with the kabaya work and my slow methods and me looking to establish an old world maison here in my hometown. So I bounced between the garment factory in what's now the Needle Trades Garment District, across town to a historic area where Wallace Simpson had grown up, and F. Scott Fitzgerald used to hang out with Zelda. So bringing that kind of, and Edgar Allan Poe. So I kind of blend that in my fashion work, but realizing that fashion is not just about the aesthetic alone. It's about the people that make it, that design it, create it, and engage with it, and then having a joy for it. Otherwise, what a tragedy it is that we lose that connection to the design work and the joy of making. All right, so my advice for our friends in India, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a designer, and you are looking to get into the industry of the work, I'd really recommend that you find that passion space, and I call it your riddle, the thing that kind of runs through your brain and you're trying to solve, but trusting your instincts in that research. So around my research, it's about impact-driven fashion entrepreneurs, and it's about the traditional skills in the needle trades. And so that said, with that work, I really had to go against the old school, not against it to disrespect it, but to be able to honor it, learn from it, but have the confidence to say, we can do something a little more. We can be kind, we can be responsible. So that's the advice I have for you, is to trust your instincts as you're looking to tradition and heritage. You're looking to larger fashion houses for insights, and to trust how you're processing that information, because that is the job of the designer and the entrepreneur, to think of new systems so that we can create a path for a next generation to be a part of. So that's my tip for you.
That was so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Stacy.
Yay. Well, I look forward to having more of these conversations and touching base soon. Thank you so much, Shruti. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Have a wonderful day. Bye.